Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Asher Marketing Podcast. I'm Anthony Giuliano, and this week's guest is Brad Boers with Brad Boers Films. Brad, how you doing?
I'm doing good. Good to see you, Anthony.
Welcome to our super professional setup with headphones and everything.
The headphones, video, lights.
All of that is
I was not expecting all this.
Well, people don't usually expect super professional out of me, but that's where Nick comes in and makes me look good and sound good and all those other things, and I obviously need all the help I can get. Well, thanks for being with us as part of your busy schedule. I know you've been working on stuff with us and other stuff and tending to your family and all those things. On this podcast, as I think you know, we talk about career path, and yours is super interesting, so I want to focus on that. And then we'll talk a little bit about your company and then some of the stuff you're working on. So career path-wise, you have lived in other places, but you've come back somewhat close to home. So take us from growing up in Ohio to moving to LA, to coming back and now living in Whitley County and shooting stuff in Indiana and Ohio. How did all that happen? And start wherever you'd like to begin.
Oh, boy. All right. Well, as far as, career path, my journey has almost been more like a career river.
Okay.
I've just kind of been floating down, and things have just sort of, I guess I've always kind of just taken paths of the least resistance when it comes to career.
Sure.
I've never really been, just very aggressively pursuing career-minded stuff, and as far as the journey from Ohio to LA, I guess, well, I went to Bowling Green State University in Ohio, and I think I changed my major too many times to count.
So what were some of the things you thought you were going to pursue? And I say this as a one-time accounting major who ended up as an English major. So what did that look like for you?
Yeah, it was, I guess, coming out of high school, it went from more practical and not knowing who I was and what I wanted to do, but just going to college. It started with business as a major.
Which is kind of like the undecided that sounds like you know what you're doing, but you really don't.
Yeah, exactly. And super practical, you know?
Sure.
And then, my creative side really started to get I just started to figure it out in college, coming out of a small town. A lot of times you're a late bloomer, figuring out, who you are, what you want to do, who you want to be. So it started business, and then it slowly transitioned to fine arts.
Okay.
So it was VCT was kind of in the middle, which was kind of practical, kind of creative, visual communication technology.
Yep.
And that, is when I started taking those classes with photography, graphic design, they just sort of did a hodgepodge of kind of visual communication.
Sure.
Photography and graphic design really drew me in, and we took electives in the art building in photography and graphic design. And as soon as I took a couple intro classes, I was like, I need to be in that building.
Okay.
Because it was just more exciting.
Sure.
There was no interest in commerce.
Yeah.
Almost to a fault.
Yeah, sure.
The way the fine arts programs were at BG then, it was all about the craft and super pure, idealistic kind of outlook that really drew me in at the time, being young. And so, and then the video film side came in. We had a project, and it was in photo, but they would do video for a semester. And then that really, I was into the photography side of just my major being picked, but doing that video, that really drew me in. I didn't want to change my major at the time or whatever to
You're too far
the
along
film
to
school
switch
of
gears.
Bowling Green. So I just graduated photo, graphic design, fine arts degree.
Okay.
Kind of knowing, and I had worked on a documentary my senior year as kind of a senior project. So when I graduated, I knew I wanted to be doing filmmaking
Yep.
documentary type stuff.
So at the time, was the technology, I'm old enough to remember a time where shooting photos and shooting video not only was better with, but required separate pieces of equipment. Is that true when you get started, or is it, pretty much flip a switch and you can make both work?
I was in college in technology years, just eons ago.
Yeah.
Early 2000s, and you couldn't really produce a cinematic looking video with a video camera. It still had to be shot on film.
Yeah.
The video cameras looked and felt super video, like Blair Witch Project.
Yeah.
So, and then photo was kind of the photo cameras were a little ahead of video cameras for digital. So there was some cameras then that looked decent.
Yeah.
But the program at Bowling Green was all film.
Yep.
Because it was so kind of arts, fine art driven. So I didn't even have a phone in college.
Yeah.
I kind of prided myself on being very anti-technology.
Sure.
Whatever you want to call it.
Yeah. A purist.
Yeah. I didn't. Yeah. I was
Yeah.
in that program, just, in the dark room, mixing chemicals. So, in the video stuff that I did, we were using super cheap, terrible quality cameras, and it was, it didn't seem like there was any accessible technology like there is now to create anything that looked professional or, So yeah, it was just a completely in photo and video weren't as integrated back then, I would say, especially from a, kind of commercial professional standpoint, where more so now video people do photo, vice versa. So it's a completely different landscape.
So you discover an interest in video near the end of your time in college. You do some work, and then what happens when you finish at Bowling Green?
Well, I graduated, and I had no interest in doing anything professional. I wanted to do something kind of wild and just more based on the experience of knowing. I guess I wanted to do something like that, but I always knew, a day and a time would come when I would settle down and get to work, so to speak.
Yeah.
I knew it wasn't then. I was like,
Sure.
I want to, I'm in my early 20s. I don't want to look back and regret this time. And I just, had built up the confidence to sort of, I think I was going on a couple summer road trips when I was in college with buddies. We went out west. That's the first time I went out to LA, and that just kind of empowers you. We printed out MapQuest, just got in the car, called our moms in Texas, told them we were heading, doing that. And when I graduated, I said, I'm just going to pack up the car and just head out there solo. It's such a, cliche kind of move, just moving out to LA. But for me, just wanting to kind of not think so professionally. And I had a professor and his son had moved out to LA, so I didn't really know him, but I had that connection. And he was a film major at Ohio University. And my professor was like, for the type of person you are and where you're at in life, what you want to do, it's a great city because you just freelance. You can, just work as a PA on film shoots. You can, I did very random odd jobs. Just, when I first moved out there, just moving furniture. And I really just wanted to, it was almost like even when I was in college, I was like, should I have just blew off college, into art school? Do I even need this?
Sure.
And should I just be living? So the post-college years were sort of let's live those years of you never went to college, sort of the ultimate. And sort of just figure things out.
Sure. So work at that point is secondary. You're doing it to get by, but you're really just experiencing different parts of the country. And it wasn't premeditated, but I was working just tons of random, odd film related jobs in LA. I would bounce from being a PA
in the camera department just as a grip and gaffer. Then I got a job in post-production. I worked for a couple of film festivals, just kind of behind the scenes. And anytime I would get going with something and I would see like kind of the career path, I'd talk to the older people in any of those sort of realms. And I was like, I don't want that.
Yeah.
So then I would just try the next thing. And the whole time I think, I wanted to make like documentaries and independent films. So, but I just, I was young. I didn't know what I wanted to say. And the technology with the cameras wasn't there. So there was a little bit of a, sort of a wall that, you couldn't get through. So, it was just a good era. I just learned the craft of filmmaking and, just had fun and I had no agenda for a career. It was like, I kind of had this idea, like I will probably eventually move back to the Midwest and try to, but I didn't, I didn't have the foresight to know that the cameras like 10 years ago from now that I could do what I do now. On my own in the Midwest and have a kind of a boutique production company. And
So how long are you in LA and when and why do you decide to move back to the Midwest?
Oh, I want to say it was around like year 5 that I was in LA, and I had been sort of the last jobs I had were working for film festivals, and that really just seeing all these filmmakers present their films, win awards, if that's like what you wanted to do, it's sort of a great job to get you kind of a little angsty and inspired because it's like you're just behind the scenes, like helping run the event and you're watching these people succeed. So
they're doing the thing you want to do.
So that really kind of just got me knowing like I want to go out and like shoot like a sort of a passion project film. That was kind of going on. I also had a boss at the post-production house I worked at, and this was before I worked for the festivals, and he gave me the advice. I was always kind of angsty and just kind of LA, the first couple of years was like fun and different, but then once it got normal, I just, all the annoyances and just sort of things that can be, to a Midwesterner, just
all the negative things you typically hear about LA.
I was always complaining to my boss, and he's just like, maybe you should just move back to the Midwest. And he's like, you want to make films, like, he's like, you stay here, you're just gonna, find a career and be an editor and be a senior editor, and maybe you can get a house out in the valley. But he's like, you're not gonna make a film. He's like, you're gonna get a family at some point. And he's like, then that, if you're working here and you're in LA, like that door shuts. Like, it's cost of living. And so, he planted that seed in my head, and then I was working for the film festivals after that and just kind of had this feeling like at some point I can't just do it. I'll feel like a failure, but something kind of has to like give me a reason to leave this city. And I'm going to try to keep this very long story short. I met a gentleman who was volunteering for one of the festivals, and he was a boxer. In his younger years, he was in his 40s. He had an amazing story about his life, and he was kind of at this point where he was having a midlife crisis and trying to reach out and get in contact with a few of his estranged children. And he wanted to box again. So all this is happening at the festival, and I'm, at this point where I'm just like bubbling to make a film. So it's just like light bulb goes off with this guy. That's the type of film I want to make, like a character study, just like something really intimate, something that's really just got like some heart to it, So I just started filming him, like as he sort of was like calling up people to get in touch
So
with
he's
the
out
kids.
in LA.
Yeah,
You meet him out in LA.
Yeah.
Where are his kids? Where is his home base?
Well, that's what happened. So his youngest son was in New Orleans. And he had lived in New Orleans years past.
Okay.
When he had his son and stuff. So he ended up moving back to New Orleans once he was able to make contact with his son. So then I had been filming him for a few months at this point. So I said, bingo, this is my ticket out of LA.
Yeah.
Like, I'm shooting a film. Yeah. I'm not leaving with my tail between my legs.
Sure.
And it's not the Midwest or Ohio, but it's New Orleans. It's like, I'm headed that direction.
Yeah.
You're
headed in the right direction.
I go to New Orleans and shoot a film for 2 years. Like, that sounds great,
Yeah.
So, and I was like funding the doc at this point, like off money I saved up. And when we went to New Orleans, I even started coming back to Ohio and working construction. I was able to get in on a union laborer's job through my dad. So making like a great union wage, I would work for 3 weeks, go back to New Orleans, shoot for 2 months. That went on for 2 years to make the film. And so when that wrapped, like, I knew New Orleans wasn't like the end stop. And so then I was like, I have 400 hours of footage.
Yep.
I'm indebted.
Yeah.
Credit cards.
Yeah. That's the motivation to edit. Yeah, right there. Yeah.
So then that road led me back to an opportunity to house sit for my cousin who was teaching in Japan, in Ohio.
All right.
So, that she was going to be gone for 2 years. All I had to do was, tend to her house and the landscaping and keep the place from burning down. So, just bunkered down there to edit the film. And then this is really when some of these DSLR cameras were coming out, like early 20-teens. So even the camera I shot the film when the bell rings on, like within a year, was just like completely out of the current trend of the look. It's just surpassed. So as I was editing the film, I upgraded equipment, and because I'm thinking like, okay, I made this film. Being back in Ohio, like, real quickly made me think about, and I think I was 30 that year, so the kind of this dual sort of realization, like, oh, I do have to like have a job. In the honeymoon, in the hangover of New Orleans and shooting the film, it's like you get back to reality. And the Midwest it's about realists and about, and that's, the kind of the phases of my life being in LA in the early 20s, just such a cloud of, it's just a cloudy city. It's like you're so far from reality in all ways, shapes, and forms. So coming full circle, being back in Ohio, it's like, I got to make money. Yeah. And I don't want to stay on that union construction crew. Yeah. Yeah. So I just started doing what a lot of people were doing at the time, shooting weddings. I mean, that's like, such a entryway to being a video creator. Sure. And kind of at the same time, finished the film, and just shooting more stuff. And, I guess small businesses and organizations would ask for videos. So I was just kind of shooting stuff like that. And I think I was still working construction because it wasn't like I was killing it at any of that stuff. I was more worried about the documentary than shooting a wedding. Sure. So it was, you could call yourself a filmmaker because you were getting paid to do it, but in itself, it wasn't paying all the bills. Exactly. Yeah. So the film, it went on to, have maybe, when you go out and do this stuff, you want to be in Sundance, like winning awards and signing distribution deals and signing a deal for the next 5 films you're going to make. And so, didn't hit that mark, but it hit somewhere in the middle. Sure. It played in, dozens of film fests. It won awards. It won the jury award at New Orleans Film Fest. So that was kind of the peak moment. Yeah. and it got like this kind of digital distribution deal, which, you know, wasn't gonna like, you know, buy me a house.
Yeah.
But
sure.
it was like, you know, little digital
Yeah.
residuals
Yeah.
monthly. Just a very sort of like, you know, when you go out and make a film, like, especially how I was at that time when I started in my 20s, I thought this is gonna, you know, I thought that, you know, and as you should, I thought it was going to be the Sundance,
Yeah.
you know,
Sure.
and I will be there, you know, it'll all just happen. I'll be a professional
Yeah.
documentary filmmaker. And,
Yeah.
it's, you know, it sort of hit somewhere in the middle. And it, which makes sense because that whole like realist sort of back in Ohio, like it was successful. Like you can watch it. It has made me money, but I had to get something going, you know, that was going to be a career.
Yeah. So it
And-
sounds like you thought it might be a launching pad, but it was actually kind of a milestone, and then you had to shift and decide what you're going to do next.
Yeah.
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 Yeah. So you're doing some commercial stuff, and I'm going to transition to talk about your company. When do you form your company? Why do you form your company? And explain what your company is, if you wouldn't mind.
Yeah.
And your company
Yeah.
being primarily you, but
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. I mean, and which all makes sense because when I tell you how it was formed, there was no rhyme, reason, or plan. I guess I was submitting the documentary and shooting the weddings, and I was like saving receipts, and the lady that was doing my taxes at the time, she's like, and I was like, I want to write all this stuff off, and I like put a, you know, a grocery store bag of receipts in front of her, and she's like, you don't have a company, like
Yeah.
I was
Yeah.
just still filing as
You're
an
just a
individual.
guy, yeah.
She's like, you have to like
Yeah.
form an LLC.
Yeah.
You don't just write this stuff off.
Yeah.
And so I was like, oh, okay, well, let's do that. You know, so
Yeah.
she helped me set up the LLC, and then it was, you know, out of just, you know, the necessity of wanting to write off the receipts,
Yeah.
which I'm sure is a story for so
sure.
many people.
Sure. Sure.
And then, yeah, so, you know, and also the transition to Northeast Indiana, which the documentary was the film was the reason that I am in Northeast Indiana. It showed at the Cinema Center, and I met my now wife
Okay.
at the screening that night.
All right.
And, you know, that's, I guess, the cool thing about, you know, making a film or life or whatever. I thought I had, you know, Sundance and all these kind of glitzy, high level goals for this film. And then you look at like the real things it brings you, so unexpected and so,
Yeah.
you know, just real stuff like having the screening in Fort Wayne, meeting my now wife,
Yeah.
you know, I'll give away Sundance and all that
Sure,
stuff for like
sure.
the real stuff in life. So
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
that's, yeah, I mean, it was funny. The night the film showed at the Cinema Center, the guy who was helping me, he was actually a Bowling Green student that helped me edit the film, and he lives in Ohio now, but he came out that night, and I had been in Fort Wayne in like 2004 when I was in college. And, you know, it had changed a lot. This is
Yeah.
like 2013.
Yeah.
So it's changed to now. But I
Yeah.
was like, man, this is such a cool city. I want
Yeah.
to live here.
Yeah.
You know, we were just kind of joking around. Like,
Yeah.
you know, I had lived in LA. Like, we just drove in and parked like in front of the Cinema Center. And I'm just like, this is a city where when you go somewhere, you just pull up and
Yeah.
park and walk
Yeah.
in.
Yeah. And park for
Yeah.
free. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's great. Yeah.
So that night, I made that joke, and then it was like, yeah, there was something going on. There was something in the air. Like, you know, you say that, you meet your wife, your film plays, like, you know, it was one of the best screenings we had, just a
Yeah.
great reception. So, and I also had some connections where I was shooting video in Fort Wayne after that. So everything was just lining up.
Yeah. Yeah.
Meeting Lindsay, having some business connections to shoot content. It all
Yeah.
made sense. And
Yeah. Yeah. So tell me what you do. I obviously know, so make believe I don't, but you and I have worked together quite a bit. But tell me what you do for someone who doesn't know anything about you, your company. What do you do, and why do you do it, and how do you do it?
yeah, I mean, that's a question that's got a lot of different answers. In one scenario, for how we work together, I will be working through an advertising agency, creating video content for one of their clients.
Yep.
So there's tons of collaboration with an art director, with the actual client.
Yep.
And yeah, it's fun. It's, the shoots are always a huge collaboration. And, I will usually kind of come in and concept will already be created, maybe some storyboards, kind of, bring in my sort of video cinematic outlook for it. And, and most of the time, I'm shooting it. I'm taking it all the way through post-production to the final product. Sometimes just a shoot is needed and a client, just wants the assets to use. But typically, I'm involved from pre-production, kind of coming in and collaborating at that point all the way through the edit. Other jobs, I'll work directly with a business, an organization or a company. And that's just depends on kind of their needs, kind of where they are. It's usually something like smaller, kind of niche-y startup. Or an organization that's so large that they have in-house internal marketing where they're working less with agencies altogether. So it's kind of, those three kind of facets. And then, I'm also still shooting. I haven't shot like a large kind of feature-length documentary, but I'm shooting short documentaries all the time, which is even more kind of fun and creative and liberating than the big endeavors.
So what are some of the, and don't feel obliged to talk about stuff you've worked on with me or Asher for that matter, but what are some of the projects that you take the most pride in that you've done, on the commercial side? Obviously your documentary is something you take pride in and that work, but on the commercial side, what are some of the projects that are most aligned with what you'd like to do, and why is that?
Yeah, well, I will start off by, and not just flatter you, but it is one of the cooler projects that I've done commercially. The series we did for Ivy Tech.
Yeah, that was
the
super
President
fun.
Awards.
Yeah. And just to set this up a little bit, Brad and I worked together to capture stories of the faculty of the year at all of, I believe, 19 Ivy Tech campuses throughout the state, and then a compilation video. So 20 videos, all shot within the period of, I think it was like 6 weeks. Everything from scheduling the faculty members and students to editing and actually being at the event and pushing the button to show the videos. So what was unique or special about that one for you?
Well, there was a few things, and I would say the biggest thing was it was a perfect sort of hybrid for me of documentary storytelling, but done commercially or with a commercial kind of, with the final product being in that vein. Because it was just telling these students stories and how these professors at different Ivy Techs inspired them. So it really, we weren't, we were just capturing these stories, and a lot of times, on a commercial shoot, it's just very, you're selling something.
Yeah.
And I mean, we were capturing like the essence of Ivy Tech, but it's sort of that perfect sort of hybrid of like, working for an organization or a corporation, but also just pure great storytelling.
Yeah, and just completely unscripted, going in. I mean, one of the things that was terrifying but worked out really well is we never really knew what we were getting. We knew that these people were obviously great, professors, but we didn't know how good they were going to be on camera. We really didn't know what their stories were. And it just all kind of came together. That was either good luck or the stories were that good that they overshadowed any problems we had. But yeah, I would say that in my career, that's one of my favorite projects I've worked on. What else comes to mind? What are some of the other stuff you've worked on that you like a lot?
Something I did a while ago, and I think it was maybe 2014. It's for a lighting company in Cleveland, Ohio called Hinckley. And they commissioned a large kind of exterior sculpture artist to do some corporate art for their headquarters. And they wanted to make a short film about this guy doing this project for the lighting. His design was like a lighting, abstract lighting sculpture. So it was right when, even when I got the job, I maybe had just set the LLC up. Like, I didn't feel like I belonged.
Yeah.
You know, I was kind of like going up to, it was a first corporate kind of shoot, so it was just a huge, for me, like pulling it off, and it turned out so great. And having the confidence to just, they gave me no guidance. They really, and I credit to them for allowing it to be just sort of like this kind of honest kind of story of this sculptor and, how he came to.
So they put themselves a little bit in the background. Yeah.
And so it was just great growth for me on that job. And I just, I can look back on it and look at how it was shot. And, it just totally kind of like the Ivy Tech job. It just was like, I felt like great filmmaking, and it was for a commercial purpose.
Yeah.
And those two things can't exist. And they don't always need to.
Yeah.
And that's kind of the thing that I've learned, and learned just in this Midwest, being a realist sort of mentality, is like every job's not going to be a documentary shoot. Like, and they don't need to be.
Yeah.
You can't force that, and it's like they'll come and they'll go, and there'll be some shoots that are a little more fluff, and you just
Well, and you and I have a similar background in that sense. I was an English major, and, quickly realized that one of my very few skills is I can write fast and mediocre. So, sometimes it should be poetry, and sometimes somebody just needs 200 words that are comprehensible by an audience, and that's okay. It's okay to get paid for that too. So, yeah. So I want to switch to sort of the speed round of the show, and I'm going to ask you 3 questions. I'm actually going to throw you a curveball. I think I've thrown everyone a curveball so far, so your curveball will be a little bit different. But I'll start with something we've already discussed, but I want to hear a synthesized answer. When you think about your path, your journey, if you will, what's your best piece of advice? Maybe it's for someone who's in a creative field who doesn't know how that translates to the working world. Maybe it's somebody who is interested in a career of photography and video, and they don't know what to do with that, or maybe it's just general good career advice. What's the best thing you've learned along the way?
Oh boy. I mean, I'm probably the last person to be giving advice.
Well, you've obviously done some things right. I mean, you've built a business from the ground up. You have plenty of work to sustain you and help sustain your family. Yeah. So you know something for sure.
I mean, yeah, and I've taken sort of a non-traditional, I guess, I never had a plan.
Mm-hmm.
And, some people, that's, the advice they give is to, to not have a plan. I wouldn't give that to everybody. I think just kind of knowing, I guess in creative fields, especially kind of knowing finding out like who you are, what you have to say, and that's the hardest thing to do, I think. And if you can't get there, and you're always trying to get there, and maybe you're not completely, but once you start to figure that out more, you're just, you're going to authentically be yourself and project that into your work.
Yeah.
And you're not trying to do something else or be someone else. And,
yeah.
I mean, that's worked for me. And like, I've gotten to a point where I know, what I can offer on every project. Like I sort of know my style, what's going to make me doing a video, what's going to make it different, not better, but than the next person, and not trying to copy or. Yeah. So.
Yeah. So that leads me to the second quick question, and you kind of led me here. What is it you think that you do differently? Again, maybe it's better, maybe it's just different, but what is it that you bring to projects that you think makes your work unique?
Well, I would say I try to bring just myself and my, you know, my personality, just kind of an openness. I like to stay really open to everybody's feedback, whether it's the client or somebody from the agency who's not in creative, just more layman's outlook. Like, I guess just staying open to, like, sometimes you get so caught up in, you know, being the creative, the visionary, the filmmaker on set that you're too in your head and you almost know too much, where sometimes that outsider's perspective, that layman's outlook is exactly what is needed to breathe some fresh air into whatever's happening. So, I mean, that's, you know, something that I try to bring to a project, try not to get too caught up in, you know, sort of having a stranglehold on the vision.
Yeah. Yeah, well, I'll say, and I'll compliment you, that I think one of the things that I like about working with you is you make it easy, but you don't feel like you're sacrificing anything in terms of quality. It's like you can tell that you're bringing a creative eye to it, but you don't have to trip over all the stuff that normally comes with, if I can say that. So it's really, the ego is out of it, and it's kind of like, how do we make this the best end product? Really inviting different perspectives, but at the same time, not getting hung up on the details, you know, really organized and professional in that way. So I appreciate that for sure. All right, here's the curveball question. What are your favorite 2 or 3 documentaries and why?
There's probably 10.
Yeah.
And I'm just going to pick the first 3 that pop into my head. Undefeated.
Okay.
And that came out right before my film did. Like, it was 2 years ahead.
Yeah.
I was able to get put in touch with the filmmakers from an old boss in LA.
Yeah.
I think they did their post in his facility. So they were just editing their film, and they were just kind of like, it was their first big film. So they were kind of peers, like, when he put me in touch with them, and they were kind of giving me advice. And I went on to see them, like, just kill it at the film fest. And that film ended up winning the Academy Award. And I'm still in touch with those guys. It's a little harder to get a hold of them now.
Yeah, sure.
But I think they appreciate that I don't, like, bug them or try to, you know, I'll just talk to them more casually.
Sure.
But so that film, and it's an amazing film outside of that, but it was, like, just so cool to kind of know those guys and see their film blow up.
Yeah.
So Undefeated. Another one would be, it's like, do I want to go recent or all time? It's tough. I really, if I just kind of go all time, I love the Dylan doc, Don't Look Back. And I saw that, like, in college, I think. You know, it was by the Pennebaker brothers, or the Maisel brothers, you know, just kind of some of the old school pioneers of doc filmmaking. But seeing that Dylan doc, I mean, it made me get into Dylan, who I don't think I was into, and just the style of it, just being verite and just kind of handheld, just following Bob Dylan around, seeing these intimate moments.
Yeah.
So that kind of style of filmmaking, and that film just in general, when I saw it, was huge. And then for number 3, let's go to something a little, I could pick a few of those old classics, but I don't want to harp on those. Something I've seen. Well, I don't even know if, I mean, this is a Netflix series that I just saw during the pandemic. It was like, I think it came out last summer, called Lenox Hill. And it's a series about neurosurgeons at a hospital called Lenox Hill. I think it's on, like, the Upper East Side in New York City. And yeah, it's, you know, Netflix is putting out, you know, 5 new doc series a month, and a lot of them I think are kind of just kind of this fluff content.
Yeah.
But that one kind of, you know, going into it thinking, oh, it's a Netflix series. Like, it was the real deal. It was
Yeah.
super raw and gritty, just the way it was filmed, and followed these guys' lives, and like a great story unfolded. And it was just super, all three of those films I mentioned are all like kind of following character studies, following these people. So, I love other docs that are more cultural, social, but the favorites have always been the character studies, sort of these where a plot sort of evolves while it's being filmed.
Sure. So I'm guessing you probably have ideas for documentaries in your mind and something you're working on. So I assume it will be a character study of some kind, the next one you do?
Yeah. I'm shooting a short doc right now on a kind of a profile on somebody local. So yeah, cool. Well, Bradley, thank you for this, and thanks for all the work you do for us. It's a pleasure working with you, and it was great to hear more of your story. And thanks to anyone who took the time to listen to this. We will be back next time with another great guest, and we hope you will join us then.